Hello, one and all, to Bedtime Stories with your host, me, Joshua. I decided that I would like to read some stories on camera because I like reading stories, and I like to read stories to people. Sounds like fun. Sounds like something that I would enjoy. And I looked through my bookshelf, and I think that this would be good. The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. I never read it, just have it on my bookshelf, and yeah. So, The Life and Stories of Santa Claus. Chapter 1, Burzee. Have you heard of the great forest of Burzee? Nurse used to sing it when I was a child. She sang of the big tree trunks standing close together, with their roots intertwining below the earth and their branches intertwining above it, of their rough coating of bark and queer, gnarled limbs, of the bushy foliage that roofed the entire forest, save where the sunbeams found a path through yeah, this is gonna be a bit harder. Of the bushy foliage that roofed through the entire forest, save where the sunbeams found a path through which to touch the ground in little spots and to cast weird and curious shadows over the mosses, the lichens, what's a fucking lichen, and the drifts of dried leaves. This is a good book. Very good, visualization within these words. It's written by L. Frank Baum. Okay. The forest of Burzee is mighty and grand and awesome to those who steal beneath its shade. Coming from the sunlit meadows into the mazes, it seems at first gloomy, then pleasant, and afterward filled with never-ending delights. For hundreds of years it has flourished in all its magnificence. The silence of its enclosure, unbroken save by the chirp of busy chipmunks, the growl of wild beasts, and the songs of birds. Yet Burzee has its inhabitants. For all this, nature peopled it in the beginning with fairies, knooks, rills, and nymphs. Okay, what is a knook? What is a rill? I know what a fairy is, I know what a nymph is. I'm gonna look this up. What is a... Sheesh. Oh. What's up, kitty? Chi. Hello, kitty. She's kitty. Krishna. Baby. You're so pretty. Oh. Okay, whatever. What's a Canuck? What's a rill? As long as the forest stands, it will be a home, a refuge, and a playground to these sweet immortals who revel undisturbed in its depths. Civilization has never yet reached Burzy. Will it ever? I wonder. 2. The Child of the Forest. Once, so long ago, our great-grandfathers could scarcely have heard it mentioned. There lived within the great forest of Burzy a wood nymph named Necile. She was closely related to the mighty queen Zerline, and her home was beneath the shade of a wide-spreading oak. Once every year, on budding day, when the trees put forth their new buds, Necile held the golden chalice of Ak to the lips of the queen. We drank therefrom to the prosperity of the forest. So you see, she was a nymph of some importance, and, moreover, it is said she was highly regarded because of her beauty and grace. When she was created, she could not have told. Queen Zerline could not have told. The great Ak could not have told. It was long ago, when the world was new and nymphs were needed to guard the forests and to minister to the wants of the young trees. Then, on some day not remembered, Necile sprang into being, radiant, lovely, straight and slim, as the sapling she was created to guard. Her hair was the color that lines a chestnut burr. Her eyes were blue in the sunlight and purple in the shade. Her cheeks bloomed with the faint pink that edges the clouds in this. Her cheeks bloomed with the faint pink that edges the clouds at sunset. Her lips were full red, pouting and sweet. For costume she adopted oak leaf green. All the wood nymphs dress in that color, and know no other so desirable. Her dainty feet were sandal-clad, while her head remained bare of covering other than her silken tresses. Necile's duties were few and simple. She kept hurtful weeds from growing beneath her trees and sapping the earth food required by her charges. She frightened away the god ghouls, or those who took evil delight in flying against the tree trunks and wounding them so that they drooped and died from the poisonous contact. In dry seasons, she carried water from the brooks and pools and moistened the roots of her thirsty dependents. That was in the beginning. The weeds had now learned to avoid the forests where wood nymphs dwelt. The loathsome gadgols no longer dared come nigh. The trees had become old and sturdy, and could bear the drought better than when fresh sprouted. So Necile's duties were lessened, and time grew laggard, while succeeding years became more tiresome and uneventful than the nymph's joyous spirit loved. While succeeding years became more tiresome and uneventful than the nymph's joyous spirit loved. Truly, the forest dwellers did not lack amusement. Each full moon they danced in the royal circle of the queen. There were also the Feast of Nuts, the Jubilee of Autumn Tintings, the solemn ceremony of leaf shedding, and the revelry of budding day. But these periods of enjoyment were far apart, and left many weary hours between. That a wood nymph should grow discontented was not thought of by Nesile's sisters. It came only to her after many years of brooding. But when once she had settled in her mind that life was irksome, she had no patience with her condition, and longed to do something of real interest and to pass her days in ways hitherto undreamed of by forest nymphs. The law of the forest alone restrained her from going forth in search of adventure. While this mood lay heavy upon pretty Nesile, it chanced that the great Ak visited the forest of Burzee, and allowed the wood nymphs, as was their wont, to lie at his feet and listen to the words of wisdom that fell from his lips. Ak is the master woodsman of the world. He sees everything and knows more than the sons of man. That night he held the queen's hand, for he loved the nymphs as a father loves his children, and Nesile lay at his feet with many of her sisters, and earnestly hearkened as we spoke. "We live so happily, my fair ones, in our forest glades," said Ak, stroking his grizzled beard thoughtfully, "that we know nothing of the sorrow and misery that fall to the lot of those poor mortals who inhabit the open spaces of the earth. They are not of our race, it is true, yet compassion well befits beings so fairly favored as ourselves. Often as I pass by the dwelling of some suffering mortal, I am tempted to stop and banish the poor thing's misery. Yet suffering, in moderation, is the natural lot of mortals, and is not our place to interfere with the laws of nature." "Nevertheless," said the fair queen, nodding her golden head at the master woodsman, "it would not be a vain guess that Ak has often assisted these hapless mortals." Ak smiled. "Sometimes," he replied, "when they are very young, children, the mortals call them, I have stopped to rescue them from misery. The men and women I dare not interfere with. They must bear the burdens nature has imposed upon them. But the helpless infants, the innocent children of men, have a right to be happy until they become fully grown and are able to bear the trials of humanity. So I feel I am justified in assisting them. Not long ago, a year maybe, I found 4 poor children huddled in a wooden hut, slowly freezing to death. Their parents had gone to a neighboring village for food, and had left a fire to warm their little ones while they were absent. But a storm arose and drifted the snow in their path. So they were long on the road. Meantime, the fire went out, and the forest and the frost crept into the bones of the waiting children. "Poor things," murmured the queen softly. "What did you do?" "I called Nelko, bidding him fetch wood from my forests and breathe upon it until the fire blazed again and warmed the little room where the children lay. Then they ceased shivering and fell asleep until their parents came. I'm glad you did thus," said the good queen, beaming upon the master. And Necile, who had eagerly listened to every word, echoed in a whisper, "I too am glad." "And this every night," continued Ak. "As I came to the edge of Burzee, I heard a feeble cry, which I judged came from a human infant. I looked about me and found, close to the forest, a helpless babe, lying quite naked upon the grasses and wailing piteously. Not far away, screened by the forest, crouched Shigra, the lioness intent upon devouring the infant for her evening meal." "And what did you do, Ak?" asked the queen breathlessly. "Not much, being in a hurry to greet my nymphs. But I commanded Shigra to lie close to the babe and to give it her milk to quiet its hunger. And I told her to send word throughout the forest to all beasts and reptiles that the child should not be harmed. What? I'm fucking Ak, bruh. That's me. No, sympathetic guy. "I'm glad you did thus," said the good queen again, in a tone of relief, but this time Necile did not echo her words, for the nymph, filled with a strange resolve, had suddenly stolen away from the group. Thought this was about Santa Claus. This is nice though. I always, since I was a kid, I liked fairies and nymphs and forest beings and things like that. Swiftly her lithe form darted through the forest paths. Slowly her lithe form darted through the forest paths until she reached the edge of mighty Burzee. When she paused to gaze curiously about her, never until now had she ventured so far, for the law of the forest that placed the nymphs in its inmost depths. Necile knew she was breaking the law, but the thought did not give her pause to her dainty feet. She had decided to see with her own eyes this infant Ak had told of, for she had never yet beheld a child of man. All the immortals are full grown. There are no children among them. Peering through the trees, Nesile saw the child lying on the grass, but now it was sweetly sleeping. Having been comforted by the milk drawn from Shigra, it was not old enough to know what peril means. If it did not feel hunger, it was content. It was not old enough to know what peril means. If it did not feel hunger, it was content. Fucking people want me to work. My job should be fucking reading children's books, honestly. This isn't my last beer. Another beer, okay, good. Fucking hell. Yeah, I have substance abuse issues. No, I don't. I'm gonna manifest substance abuse issues by saying that I do. I don't have substance abuse problems. I have substance abuse solutions. Softly the nymph stole the side of the babe and knelt upon the sward, her long robe of rose leaf color spreading about her like a gossamer cloud. Gossamer? These are some words. Her lovely countenance expressed curiosity and surprise, but most of all, a tender, womanly pity. The babe was newborn, chubby and pink, was entirely helpless. While the nymph gazed, the infant opened its eyes, smiled upon her, and stretched out two dimpled arms. In an instant, Nesile had caught it to her breasts, and was hurrying with it through the forest paths. So how big are fairies? Or wait, no, she's a nymph. Okay, so she's a forest nymph. When you look at like paintings of like nymphs and stuff, they're human-sized. So are they human-sized? She was carrying the baby, caught it to her breast, and was hurrying with it through the forest paths. So I guess they're human-sized. 3. The adoption. The master woodsman suddenly rose, with knitted brows. There is a strange presence in the forest, he declared. Then the queen and her nymphs turned and saw, standing before them, Nesile, with the sleeping infant clasped tightly in her arms, and a defiant look in her deep blue eyes. And thus, for a moment, they remained, the nymphs filled with surprise and consternation. But the brow of the master woodsman gradually cleared as he gazed intently upon the beautiful immortal who had willfully broken the law. Then the great auk, to the wonder of all, laid his hand softly on Nesile's flowing locks and kissed her on the fair forehead. For the first time within my knowledge, said he gently, a nymph has defied me and my laws. Yet in my heart I can find no word of chiding. Shitting. What is your desire, Nesile? Let me keep the child, she answered, beginning to tremble and falling on her knees in supplication. Here in the forest of Burzy, where the human race has never yet penetrated, questioned Doc. Here in the forest of Burzy, replied the nymph boldly, it is my home, and I am weary for lack of occupation. Let me care for the babe. See how weak and helpless it is? Surely it could not harm Burzy, nor the master woodsman of the world. Oh, the law, child, the law, cried Ock sternly. The law is made by the master woodsman, returned Nesile. If he bids me care for the babe, he himself has saved me from death. Who in all the world dare oppose me? Queen Zerlian, who had listened intently to this conversation, clapped her pretty hands gleefully at the nymph's answer. You are fairly trapped, O Ock, she exclaimed, laughing. Now, I pray you, give heed to Nesile's petition. Now I pray you, give heed to Nesile's petition. The woodsman, as was habit when in thought, stroked his grizzled beard slowly. Then he said, She shall keep the babe, and I will give it my protection. But I warn you, as this is the first time I have relaxed the law, so shall it be the last time. Nevermore, to the end of the world, shall a mortal be adopted by an immortal. Otherwise we would abandon our happy existence for one trouble and anxiety. Good night, my nymphs. And Ock was gone from the midst, and Nesile hurried away to her bower to rejoice over her newfound treasure. So I'm gonna guess that this child that she saved, that it's gonna be Santa Claus in the future. But that's all I'm gonna read now. It's almost 30 minutes. Man, I wish I was fucking a nymph or a fairy or a woodsman, great woodsman. That's life as a human. Mortal. Am I mortal? Can't imagine that I would be mortal. That I can die. Doesn't make sense. How strange.